Hi, hello, welcome back. I'm getting that mixed up. This is the first time we're meeting. My name is Elena. I am the homeschooling mama to 3 kiddos. I'm gonna start wrapping up what I read in July. Kind of feels weird to say that because this clip, it's only like the 3rd day of July, but I finished 2 books, so let me tell you about them. The way that I usually do my wrap-ups is I will try to record right after I finish reading the book little blurbs of my thoughts on it. That way you don't forget, and also I can only get like small increments of time sometimes. So let me tell you about the 2 books I finished. Circling Back to You by Julie Tieu. This one I actually finished in June. I finished it the last day of June, but I had already edited the June wrap up, so I didn't add it in. But I started this in June and finished it on the last day. This was a cute story. This is also by the author of The Donut Trap. I had read The Donut Trap before and enjoyed it. I will tell you there are some steamier bits in here, but it's like a paragraph or 2, and so I just kind of skipped over those. If that's not something that you're into, you can easily skip over those chapters. It's not like a big chunk of the book, but there are a couple of chapters in here on that. Not chapters, paragraphs. It's not whole chapters. It's just a couple of paragraphs. Anyways, this one follows Cadence and Matt. Cadence is, they both work at this real estate company and they are work friends. There is some hope from amongst the coworkers that they will get together, but Cadence is very like, no, I cannot date someone that I work with. Matt kind of doesn't think Cadence is interested in him at all, so he dates other girls, but nothing lasts forever. And of course they end up having to go away on this work trip, and it becomes a coworkers to lovers type situation, friends to lovers. The back of it kind of says that Matt has to enlist Cadence as his pretend girlfriend for a family gathering, but really by the time that happens, it's not really a fake dating trope. They're kind of already testing the waters. So I feel like maybe that's a little bit off, but all in all, it's still a really good story. Cute romance if you like those kinds of books. So I was not disappointed. Like I said, just skimmed over the steamier bits, paragraphs, and enjoyed the rest of the book. Then I read the second book in the Misty River Romance series, Let It Be Me by Becky Wade. This book follows Sebastian, who is also part of the Miracle 5, and it also gives us a little glimpse, a paragraph into what Luke's story may be becoming for the next book that is in this trilogy. But it talks about Sebastian and Ben. Sebastian in the first book is, well, I won't say exactly how he meets a woman, but he meets a woman, doesn't catch her name, but thinks she's an angel and really wants to get to know this woman better. Meanwhile, we have Ben, who is also part of the Miracle 5. And if you've read the first story, it's about 5 kiddos who are on a mission trip and they get trapped because of a massive earthquake, and their story has become huge. The way that they were saved is really a miracle, and so that's how they're known as the Miracle 5. So the first one follows one of the girls, Genevieve, as in the Miracle 5, Genevieve, and introduces and also has her sister Natasha, which was a member of the Miracle 5. This book follows Sebastian and Ben and their friendship. There are 2 more characters in the Miracle 5, and Luke rounds out the 5. Luke is in prison, so we don't see a lot of him, and he doesn't really interact with the other Miracle 5 kids, which are now adults. Anyways, this follows Sebastian and Ben, their friendship and their love interest, and also introduces Leah. Leah is Sebastian's angel, and unbeknownst to one another is also Ben's friend that he's been crushing on for years. And so we follow along and figure out, will the friendship stand this test? Leah, will she fall from one of the boys or men? And it just woven in between 2, we also learn about Leah and kind of the mystery of who her true parents are. The first book also in this Misty River series had like a mystery background too. We were learning about Genevieve and Natasha's parents and a secret they had. So I kind of like that there's that element to it, the book, but it doesn't take it over. And the way that she weaves in the romance and the friendships and the mystery. It all just kind of goes together so nicely. So I will be looking at my library for the third book to finish that up. Although I wonder, because the third book is going to be about Luke and him coming out, being released from prison, and his story, but I am going to pick up the third book and read that as well. But these are the two that I finished so far, and honestly don't know what we're going to pick up next. I still have 2 more books from June that I haven't finished, the like more self-help type books, Atomic Habits and Permission to Offend. I'm almost finished with both of them, but I don't know if I'll get to finish Permission to Offend before I have to return it to the library. We'll see. Really quickly, because we're going to turn this to the library soon, I finished Permission to Offend by Rachel Luna. I think I mentioned this, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in previous videos, but I had actually belonged to her journaling group a couple of years back, so I'm familiar with her and her thoughts. So I kind of feel like going into this book, I had maybe a deeper understanding than someone who is not familiar with her or her works. So Rachel Luna is a very big proponent of journaling and mind shift changes, your thoughts become your actions, become you, that type of thing. And so breaking those bad thoughts and barriers. And then she's also very big on journaling and what she calls her right script shift method. I am familiar with, like I said, because I belonged to her journaling group a few years back, but there is a little bit where it leans on manifesting and having that much control in your life by journaling and being able to put forth these things and making them happen that way. And that's where I personally disagree with. But I did finish, like I said, I did finish her book. There are lots of nuggets, other nuggets in here to be had that you can glean from. Really like looking at yourself and figuring out maybe different obstacles in your mind that you're holding and things like that. The title, Permission to Offend, she is basically just saying, you know, it is okay for you to create boundaries where you need to, but also kind of maybe are we setting, she invites you to like look at things a little bit deeper and see if it's really boundaries that you're setting. Are you just kind of being a jerk, or is this something that you need to do? All in all, like I said, there are pieces that I was able to take from it. I am familiar with her work, but there are pieces too where I will probably leave behind. So finish this, on to the next one. Okay, I feel like July has been a little bit of a slump-ish month for me. Is that a word? I have only read 5 books this month, which is low for me, but also the books that I have read, I just kind of forced myself to finish reading it. Another, I read it and it was okay. Like, I just feel like this month it's been really hard for me to really dive in and find some really good books or books that I'm really enjoying. I don't know if it's because it's summer and the weather, well, now it's taken a turn and it's super hot. But usually in the winter, I cocoon in and I just want to hibernate and read and snuggle up. So I don't know if it's like summer months that I thought it was going to take a dip, my reading. But anyways, let's dive in to the rest of the books that I read for this month. But let me know if you can relate. If you're reading less in the summer, or if you find that you're actually reading more because you're reading outside and enjoying the weather. I'm really curious to know, how much are you reading these days? Are you reading more? Are you reading less? One of the books that I did read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Is it Maas or Moss? Man, I'm just full of questions today. So I checked it out online from our library, and it is the Throne of Glass, I guess, like prequels. So it says on Storygraph 0.1 to 0.5 because it's made up of like short story-ish. This is a book that I kind of felt I forced myself to finish reading, and I don't know if it's because maybe I should have read it in a different sequence. Like maybe I should have read one of the Throne of Glass books, like the series, one of those first. The first book, full book in the series, is Throne of Glass, and so maybe I should have read that first before I read the prequels, but I read the prequels and it was just okay. But like I said, it's kind of in that month for me. So this is, it's got 5 kind of short stories that introduce this character to you. And I believe that this is kind of giving her background story and how she became who she is. And then in Throne of Glass, we pick up where she's at and follow that story. If you've read the Throne of Glass series, let me know if you like it, if it's worth it for me to pick up these books and continue on in the series, or if it was okay to just put it down, because that's what I ended up doing. I finished the Assassin's Blade prequels, or whatever you want to call it, and I don't really have right now a desire to pick it up, but I'm having a really hard time finding a book that I can really sink my teeth into anyways. So the other book that I read, though, thinking that it would help get me out of my funk, was the last book in the Misty River Romance by Becky Wade. So I read Turn to Me, and it really answered all my questions from the previous book that I read, from book 2. So I checked that out online as well. So I read it digitally. This book, I felt like, really did tie up the stories very nicely. I liked being back in this world and knowing more about the Miracle 5. Becky Wade is just such a great author anyways, so I find it hard that I wouldn't find a book that I loved. I will say, of the 3 books, the first one was my absolute favorite. And then maybe the third, this final one, Turn to Me, was my second favorite. And then the second book would have been my least of the 3. But the second book wasn't a bad book. It's just, if I had to number it in my most favorite to least, that's how I would do it. In this last book, we finally get to talk more about Luke and his life and find out what's making him tick or not tick. If you have been following, or if you've read the first 2 books in the series, Luke is one of the Miracle 5 that didn't do any of the press tours. He is the one that lost his little brother, and it just, as it will, changed his life forever, and he blames himself and carries his guilt with him for years and years. And so this is Luke's story, and how later in life he goes to prison, and now he is out, and what he's going to do with his life, promises that he made, and he's just trying to keep them. Of course, there's a romance in there and a little bit of a mystery. So all in all, great third story. Like I said, I think it finished up the trilogy quite well. And then Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren came. I had it on hold digitally in my library, and it was my turn. So I read that one. This book I read fairly quickly. So I did enjoy it, but like I said, I've just kind of been like in a meh mood. I don't know how you would even maybe. But I don't think it's the books. I think it just might be me. So I read Love in Other Words. Follows Elliot and Macy, and it goes back in time. There's a dual timeline. Oh, my AC is going to kick on. Hang on. Okay, so it follows the dual timeline with Elliot and Macy. Elliot and Macy are childhood friends and kind of meet in a unconventional way, but it bounces back and forth from present day to the past, and it fills in the blanks of what happened with them, how they went from being the very best of friends and a lot of firsts for each other to not speaking to each other for several years, and what that is going to look like now. When we catch up with Elliot and Macy in current times, Macy is engaged, but she herself kind of feels like she's just going through the motions, and she's not really sure she's in love with the person that she is engaged to. She is kind of just doing the next step, what seems logical. And so, of course, at this point, Elliot steps back into her life quite accidentally. Of course, Elliot steps in at this point, and or maybe not so accidentally, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, what is she gonna do? Because she's engaged, and that's kind of a big deal. So we follow them along, and we get to go back and forth. This is a really endearing story. I did like this story. Like I said, I think it's just my mood this month where I'm just like, can't really find books to get into. This book, though, I did finish in just a few days. So all in all, that book was a great book too. The only other Christina Lauren book I think I've read is The Unhoneymooners, and I also enjoyed that book. Right now, I think I'm currently reading 3 books. One I may DNF, and it kind of pains me to do it. I'm just not fully invested in it, is Because You Loved Me by Beth Moran. This one has some really great reviews on my library page. I'm trying to see if it has the same reviews on Storygraph too. It's got an average of 3.84 stars on Storygraph. So I may just DNF this for now and pick it up at another time. But right now I'm just not diving into it like I normally do with books. And then I have another digital read out, After a Fashion. This one is by Jen Turano, and I have read the second book in this series, so I'm going back and reading the first one, and this one I am a little bit more invested in, so probably will finish that. That's where the end of my month is going to end up. I may end up finishing After a Fashion, but I'm not quite sure. At the time of filming, there's only a few more days of July left. That was it for my month though. Let me know how your month went. If you have any books that you recommend to kind of get you out of a reading slump, what are your go-tos for that? Or do you have a go-to genre or author that you kind of pick up and know will get you out of the slump? I don't know. This is the first part of the year where I think I've hit that slump. So we'll see if August gets better or if it continues throughout the summer. Thanks so much for hanging out with me though. I really appreciate you taking your time out and spending it here with me. And as always, if you don't know or you just need to be reminded, may be the one to tell you that you are deeply and truly loved and so appreciated. Thanks again for watching.